Greetings, everybody. Welcome to our first UAGC TED Talks Discussion Club meeting of 2023. My name is Mark Hanitka, and this is a joint production between Clifford Blizzard and myself. If you could mute if you're not talking right now. The theme this month is business and economics, and I found two quite different videos, one that is about economics and somewhat of an unusual application, and it's very, very near and dear to me because that was one of my undergraduate degrees was economics, and actually, sorry, my master's degree was economics with a focus on what this video will cover. And then the second one is kind of a little bit of a flip, and I think it makes some interesting points, and it hopefully will lead to some good discussion. So without further ado, we will be watching, and I will post the link. It is called, let me share my screen too. It is called What a Living Whale is Worth and Why the Economy Should Protect Nature. And this is, I think, a very fascinating topic, which is basically economic valuation of environmental services and goods and other things and why it's important. So now I'm going to pause recording. If I can find it so we can start watching. All right, welcome back. I'm so curious. There's been a lot of really great chat so far, which is great, but I would love to hear some people's thoughts on this idea. Had anybody heard of these efforts? And there was actually the first time that I guess in grad school, but there was another really good TED Talk, which I would have shared, but it's from, I want to say like 10 years ago, like 8 to 10 years ago. But I'll link that later on because it's worth a look, and it talks kind of about the broader field of environmental valuation and why it's important. But yeah, I'd love to hear thoughts from everyone.
Hi, everybody. This is Kim Barefoot. First call. I actually have more of a question, and I don't know if I missed it in his talk, but how did he put the dollar amount on the, I guess the resale value or something of that carbon? Where did he get that dollar?
Sure. So I don't think he got into the specifics of his model or sources, but there's actually already global carbon offset markets. So there's already somewhat of an established market value of, let's say, like a company or an individual wants to basically give money to an organization or group that is doing conservation work that is capturing carbon, like through different types of ecosystem restoration work. And then, different people have different projects, and they say, like, this is how much carbon dioxide we can capture, and this is how much, our project will cost. So this is how much it is, like, per ton probably of carbon dioxide. So that, like, some of this has already been going on, I would say, for maybe like 10 years. And then, throughout having many different projects, they've kind of come up with a cost, an average cost for sequestering carbon dioxide. So, what he's saying is that, a lot of people think of these resources as things to be harvested, exploited and turned into economic activity. But the idea is that by letting nature continue to be and thrive without us destroying it or harvesting it, it actually is providing high value of services, to everybody in the world, basically. So, it's kind of the non-use value of those animals, plants, ecosystems, because they are doing all these things that many people don't think of and don't put a value on. So.
Yeah, I just put into chat, forgive me, I just want to mention, I put into chat one link from the EPA, and there are others. the concept of ecosystem services, which is really tied to what this talk is about, because he's looking at the whale within the context of an ecosystem and the things that ecosystems do functioning to help us and help all life on the planet. The study of ecosystem services is basically looking at what things these, for instance, wetlands absorb and filter water. So how do we put it? Then the question becomes, how do we put a dollar value on these? Because that's really the ultimate thing, is to recognize the intact ecosystem. It's the whale, but it's the whale within a functioning ecosystem. So of course, the charismatic whale will get the donations to support its cause, and well, it should. They're amazing animals. But I want to put a word out for the krill and the phytoplankton too. They're all functioning together, and that they're doing things that our engineering can barely touch upon, certainly at the level of efficiency that they're doing.
What I wanted to say was, I think out of this video that we just viewed, one of the messages that is truly highlighted is that nature is so important, and we each need to do our part and share that message with the people that we know can or will probably make a difference. Hearing that story about the whales and the ecosystem, the way it works, I mean, we learned this when we were in 3rd grade, but people need to be reminded of that. And it is critical for us to, in order for nature to love us, we need to love it first.
What struck me about this, he didn't go into a lot of detail, but he touched briefly on the legal aspect of economizing nature preservation. And that reminds me of the October TED Talk that we did with asking, should lakes and rivers have some of the same legal rights as humans? And those are very interconnected in terms of not just how we economize it, but how do we manage it? Who's in charge of it? Who's trusted with protecting the natural resources? So he didn't go into a lot of detail, but there's definitely some similarities.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine and Linda, for sharing. Yeah, that's a great point. I will say too, and obviously Clifford and I both come from somewhat of an environmental background, so it might seem like these TED Talks skew towards environment, but if you do look at the TED Talk page, and we do try to draw from ones that are more recent, TED is heavily covering environmental issues and different kind of aspects and ways of approaching, like whether that's business, leadership, science, innovation, these different areas. So I think it's, and I'm happy that it's a topic that in popular media is growing in coverage and discussion. So, but. Would anyone else like to share some thoughts, questions, or comments? Yeah, I agree, Maria. The environment does affect everything around us. And I don't know, hopefully all of you either have taken or will get a chance to take Science 207 at your time at UAGC. But if that class really, hopefully will leave you with a greater appreciation for how important the environment is and how much we affect it and how much then that comes back to affect us as well.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. One thing that I found interesting, it kind of goes to show the power of sort of voluntarism and showing the sort of value add for companies to invest in things like protecting nature and stuff. One thing I'm curious about is, does this person have a specific call to action for what business leaders should do to protect the whales and foster this ecosystem he's describing?
That's a great question. And I just see you listed as a phone number, I think, but thank you for sharing. And I would say did you want to, sorry.
I'm Andrew Williamson. I had to walk the dog, so I joined back into my phone.
No worries. Thanks for joining us, Andrew. So I don't think that in the video, I think they highlighted that maybe framework for this new economy where resources flow generally from developed countries where we've benefited the most from kind of the exploitation of nature that has, contributed to our economic growth over the past 100 years. And then, this might see some of that money going back to less developed countries that are still trying to get, basic services, food, water, electricity, medicine, education set up. So this might be in some ways a transfer of wealth, but also, I would certainly say in terms of like what companies can do is to be mindful of how their decisions and practices impact the environment, impact different ecosystems. And we as consumers can hold companies accountable by, doing a little bit of research, keeping an eye on things. And if certain companies are identified as having significant environmental impacts, then, we can hold them accountable, not support them, write letters to political representatives, try to get media attention to that issue. Like one thing I think that is changing is cruise companies with cruise ships used to dump basically their waste, their bathroom waste in the ocean, like at certain points when they were going on their journeys. But that has come to the attention of, I think, media and a lot of people, and that is being phased out now. So hopefully that will be a practice that is no longer happening at some point in the future. But I'm trying to think too, obviously, like in the United States, we don't eat a lot of whale, but in other countries, it is something that is still considered a delicacy. So I think just raising awareness of consumers about the harm of consuming certain types of products. Clifford posted the
Seafood Watch app comes to mind. Obviously, again, we're not eating the whale, but we don't have to be doing that. If there's fisheries out there, first of all, there's bycatch, where a lot of these fisheries are catching other things that they're not supposed to be catching, and they don't live. A lot of their nets just aren't designed for that. And what they're doing effectively, a lot of the fishing is bottom trawling, which is just, I have to use the word evil. I really do. If you think about clear cutting, bottom trawling is the equivalent, but along the bottom of the ocean. They just kind of scrape the ocean floor, and whatever's there is what comes up. Edible things and non-edible alike, and a lot of them get destroyed in the process. So there's a wonderful app that's through the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and you can download this right onto your smartphone, and it will tell you, basically, you can search species, whether you're at a restaurant, whether or a grocery, and we'll make recommendations as to sustainable fisheries, because there are relatively sustainable fisheries out there. Right now, the Pacific salmon fishery is one of them. There are a few. There aren't a lot, but there are a few, and we can make better choices, make more informed choices. And ultimately, that will put pressure on the companies as well. Our choices do put pressure on them in terms of what they're going to come out with and what they're going to support. But I do think there is a groundswell growing for companies to start thinking in terms of the environment. And what's interesting too, kind of, I don't want to waste all the evening on this, but if you look at a company like Interface, which is a carpet company out of my current home state of Georgia, that has found that by moving towards sustainable practices, they're actually making more money. And that's the thing. I think there's this misapprehension on the part of a lot of corporations that if they move toward more sustainable designs and practices, it's going to cost them money. And interestingly enough, it doesn't always do that. Sometimes they save money by doing that. There's a wonderful book, and it's quite old now, but it's influenced a lot of people, called The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken. And he's actually gone on to write a couple of really cool books about ways we can collectively basically reverse climate change through a collection of strategic actions. But The Ecology of Commerce was all about this. It was this idea that, we can introduce sustainable practice and design so we can have a long-term vision for a healthy world and continue to be involved in corporate practice. And there are a number of corporate companies that have been really inspired by this, leaders of companies. So anyway, that's a book I strongly encourage you to look at. It's a classic, The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken, Hawken as well. And consider this app. If you live near the coast, if you eat seafood, I encourage you to look into it as a helpful tool.
Thank you, Clifford. Any other thoughts on this one before we move on to the next one? Because I do want to leave enough time for some discussion on the next video as well. All right, next, and this one might be a little controversial. It does make some really interesting points though, and I think there's some valid points. It's definitely probably coming from somebody who's on the opposite side of the maybe economic spectrum of view as the video that we just watched. This one is called "What Capitalism Gets Right and Governments Get Wrong" by Katherine Mangu-Ward, and I will post the link. This one was relatively recent as well. There is the link. Now I'm going to stop recording. All right, welcome back. So yeah, as I said, that one was quite a bit different. Really curious to hear people's thoughts about that. I know there's a lot of people on a lot of different sides of the capitalism versus other ways of doing things, or the problems with capitalism, or problems with government capital collusion. Yeah.
I don't really see a dichotomy there necessarily. The first video was showing that there's a value in maintaining ecosystems, and as Clifford pointed out, there's also a sort of attracting customers incentive to doing ecological things, because now everyone is sort of ecologically sensitive to some degree. So doing these sorts of initiatives will get you more customers. Oh, Brian, I have that exact same mug. I have that same coffee mug. Sorry. So I think that those two things kind of go hand in hand. It's in the company's better interest from the perspective of capitalism to preserve our earth and to show that they care about these things.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Wonderful points. Thank you for sharing. Would anybody else like to? Oh.
I'll jump in because it's interesting to think about. One of my biggest concerns is the time. I think about, of course, they mentioned the cell phone, and I can't help but think about it because my iPhone 14 Pro arrived today, which I have no business buying financially, but I just love photography. I couldn't help myself. It's on my mind because I spent most of the day working with it. And I didn't get it. I should say, I didn't really get it as an upgrade per se, because my old phone I'm giving to my wife to use. And so I'm getting a new one, but I do think about it because I'm participating now in this capitalist venture every year. Of course, down there talking about the iPro 15. Should I wait for that? The 16, who knows, on the horizon. And we're in the midst, and the so much of what goes into the cell phone, the metals, cobalt and such, are being mined under horrific conditions for people, let alone for wildlife, in parts of Central Africa. I'm kind of colluding in that now by buying this. And I can't help but think about that. And I can't help but think about planned obsolescence. And, when I talked to the person on AT&T today, they said, well, you have this SE second generation you want to give your wife. Great. It's not 5G. We have a 5G network now. You're much better getting another phone. And I'm thinking, wow, this SE, which is 2020, is already out of date. And we're just being pushed to keep buying more things and new things. Technology is, of course, speeding along. That's wonderful, but it means all this old stuff is being generated. And we're continuing on this linear economy, right? We mine stuff out of the ground, we turn it into these pieces of technology, and then when they get old, we're not recycling them very well at all still as a culture. And it seems to me that we're making progress toward a circular economy, but how long is that going to take? Do we have the luxury of the time it's going to take for corporations to jump on the bandwagon but and of themselves? We just leave them to their own devices, so to speak. And here I think of this device as an example. Is this going to happen fast enough, or are we going to get to the end of the line before that happens? That seems to me the $1 million in more ways than one question. So I'll just leave it with that. But that's something I think about as I go out and buy this new phone.
Well, we're already seeing the market forces act upon that kind of thing. So we're seeing supply chain disruptions that bring into focus all the weird places in the world where we get these materials and what we have to do to get them. So I think we're actually going to see some outcome more in the direction that you're looking for, just based on what's happened in the past year or so.
Hello, everyone. Can y'all hear me good? Okay. Like Clifford, I did just purchase a new cell phone, and I'm being a tech guy. It was kind of easy for me to do, but after taking the science classes and looking at how the honors science class that was mentioned earlier, and looking at how of an big impact that we each have on the environment, I did feel guilty. I felt guilty from buying the phone, and I kind of waited, even though I wanted the phone a long time ago. I waited till I kind of needed it because my old phone was messing up. But to comment on the video we just seen, I didn't realize how much of companies actually failing and shutting down actually helps the economy. I never thought of it like that. It's kind of like the ecosystem. Everything works with each other. Whatever is lost here is gained somewhere else. And that's one concept that as far as economics, that I never thought of how a failing business could actually be good for the economy and capitalism.
Thank you for sharing, Byron. Yeah, there are a lot of parallels in it because they are both complex systems with multiple components, actors, lots of processes. They take place in different spatial areas, and in a way, kind of when a business goes bankrupt or goes away, fails, it's kind of like a species going extinct, which is something that happens normally and naturally throughout the existence of the earth and species of plants and animals. Now, like in the last how long, like I guess a few hundred years, or since humans came about, basically we've been in a greatly above normal rate of extinction of other species, which is not necessarily a good thing. So I guess that economies probably move similarly, like when there's different market cycles or recessions or things, like more businesses might go under, and that could be overall unhealthy for the economy at the time. But yeah, thank you for sharing, Byron. Maria shared her husband has an interest in a company called Fairphone. They try to make more sustainable phones. Not sure how well they're doing, as he hasn't purchased one yet. That's interesting. Yeah, and that is one thing that I think I do know that I believe Apple is working on a process to basically automate old phones coming in that are beyond their useful life. Obviously, with technology, one of the best things is that if you're done with it, you should find a way to either donate it to somebody who can still use it, or resell it or something before you just dispose of it. And I think a lot of people do that. But when a piece of technology is really at the end of its life, I think we need, and hopefully we will see more companies coming about of efficient ways of reclaiming all of the materials that are in those pieces of technology. Because if you've ever looked at like a circuit board or something, all of the stuff is pretty much like gold plated. So there's actually, like in a computer or a bunch of electronics, there's like a certain amount of gold that you can reclaim. It's not easy, but there are ways to do it. And similarly, there's like silver, other metals, different materials. So I think that, we'll see hopefully that become more and more of a practice, which will definitely lessen some of the environmental impact. Now, granted, all that takes energy, and remanufacturing it into new technology takes energy and labor. So we do also want to be careful about not over consuming or, consuming unnecessarily either.
And I cannot help but mention, Mark, the city in China, where for many years there was a lot of the kind of recycling of this e-waste, and it was happening under conditions that are jaw-dropping in terms of human health. The hazards, the horrific conditions these very obviously not very well off people were facing, who were doing that work. So we think of recycling as green. Well, in this case, it was just the pollution and the so even recycling can be problematic. We're not to a point yet that all that's happening in a way that's environmentally safe. So it's quite a journey to go.
Yeah, a lot of things are. It seems
Yeah.
like a lot of things that are sold as green are actually just displacing the pollution. A lot of recycling's like that. Lithium battery technology is like that right now.
Greenwashing, absolutely. One great example was one of the major soft drink companies, I don't remember whether it's Pepsi or Coke, came out with this bottle and they said, well, we're using less plastic for this container. Yes, well, as a result, it's less desirable to recycle because there's not as much plastic in it. So it actually led to a decrease in recycling and more plastic waste in the landfill rather than less. So yeah, not all that's called green is anywhere near there either. Yeah, thank you, Linda. Yes, and I'm not going to pronounce the name of that city in China, but there are some exposés out there. If you want to just Google Guyu, forgive me, anyone living there, for my butchery of that name, but there were some exposés in some major publications online with photographs of the conditions people were living in. Squalor doesn't begin to describe it. There was just and there we go. Here we can take care of e-waste. Oh, it's going over there, and people are dying basically as a result of this process of processing it. So I can't wait for the day that these pieces of technology are modular, where the base unit stays relatively the same, but you just plug and unplug and add pieces over time, so that there's not as much, so the main body of the unit, whatever it is, phone or whatever, can remain relatively the same, rather than just getting an entirely new one. That would be a good step. And that's kind of, and then also lifetime, where you're actually renting a phone, and then the company that puts it out is ultimately responsible for it. That's the way Interface works with carpet. A company will rent essentially carpet for their company, and then when it's reached the end of its life, it goes back to Interface to be recycled and reprocessed.
I have a funny story about recycling. I probably shouldn't name the organization, but I was a part of this volunteer nonprofit organization, a kind of community organization. We needed some like lofts. We had this big space. We need some lofts so that we could have just increase our space. So we went to a silicon manufacturing company that I also won't name, and they were looking to, well, actually, no, we had a member who was a part of that company. They were looking to recycle some these supports that were designed to hold these multi-ton fabrication machines. And they're like solid steel. They can hold thousands of pounds, and they're like 12 feet tall. So you can just put them in your warehouse, and you have like a whole floor, and you just double your space. So we told them that we would recycle them. Now, this is true. We recycled them by putting them in our space and using them. They might have gotten the impression somehow that we're going to melt them down, which would be a terribly small ecological disaster in itself. But yeah, they were recycled. It's fine. And it benefited the community.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Andrew. Well, we are almost at the end of our time. I did want to launch this poll. We're trying to get an idea of our audience, which we're so happy to have 30 students here with us live. And we will post the recording in the UAGC YouTube channel, which I'll share a link for that right now. If you are currently in the UAGC honors program and you are tracking this, make sure to track it in your own Excel spreadsheet. And then also there is the link for the Qualtrics survey, and make sure to have your reflections. It's recommended to put your reflection on the event in the Qualtrics, of course, but then also in your own document. So when you get your 15 hours, it'll just make the process a lot easier of getting that that credit. So, and if you're not already in the UAGC honors program and you're thinking about joining, you can learn more about that when you join. And yes, Catherine, to answer your question, yes, you can just do the process the same, fill out the Qualtrics survey reflection. Yes, you can view those videos, and I will grab the link to the UAGC honors YouTube page. Oh, you have it. Great.
Yeah, I do have it. I just wanted to make sure.
Sure. I'm going to share it anyway, just in case anybody else does not have it. And this is where the UAGC TED Talks discussion club is not exclusive to honors. It's just where we've been, I guess, marketing it the most, because, you know, we do think it's a great opportunity to have these types of discussions, to, you know, work towards that, those 15 co-curricular credits. But it is open to any student at UAGC. And yeah, so if you haven't already filled out the poll, please do so. And if not, our next TED Talks will be, let me see, February. It will be February 8th. February 8th at the same time. And I don't have the topic offhand, but it will go out with the invite email in the first week of February.
And if you have topics you'd like to see covered, things you'd like to talk about, even a video you'd like to have a group discussion around, by all means, let us know. We're trying to be more responsive. We want to have a variety of topics, but we also want to be responsive to things that are of particular interest. So if there's something that you really would love to get a group exploring, go for it. Let us know. We'll figure out a way to fit it in. I'll even do, if we get several of them, I'll do maybe special events every few months where we do a TED Talks discussion based around things you folks have identified, and you're welcome to even lead them. But by all means, and on behalf of Mark and myself, thank you so much for coming. I enjoy these hours immensely. I'm so grateful to all of you for being, those of you that are involved in honors. Those of you that aren't, do consider it. It's life-changing. I promise you that, and in a good way. That it will really be, it'll be rewarding. It's challenging. It isn't, easy all the time, but it's challenging, and I think you'll find it exciting. Part of your UAGC experience. So if you have any questions, just reach out to us. Mark and I are pretty much the honors folks. So if you have questions and concerns or thoughts or ideas, please come to us for those. So thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.